Howdy doody. Welcome to episode 140 of TDI. This is Dr. O on the horn to start per usual. I'm joined as always by my sidekick, my co-host, I should say, Ricky Flicks. And not only am I joined by Ricky Flicks today, we are joined by not only our official DC correspondent, but our correspondent for Middle Earth. We got Big Mike on the podcast, right? You see him on the YouTube right now. Welcome, Big Mike. I believe the last time we saw you, we were talking the Batman. Is that true?
Yeah, it was Ezra Miller had like 3 arrests to go.
Yes, right. Going
Back
down
when
to Ezra Miller.
DC was flying high.
And I gotta say, like Warner Brothers is still taking hits right now. I know Ricky and I have not done a checkup in a minute. It's been a little over a week, I think, since our last one. Warner Brothers, since we last discussed this studio, my favorite studio, and one that was responsible, I think, for Lord of the Rings. Is that true?
Warner Brothers, yep. New Line Pictures produced. I think Warner Brothers
distributed. Okay, yeah. Gotcha. This is why we have Big Mike on the horn right now, and that's why we have him for today's draft. But Warner Brothers is only releasing 2 more movies for the rest of the year. One that seemed like it's doomed at this point with all the news that has come out regarding Don't Worry, Darling, and then Black Adam, DC movie. You never know what DC is going to fire at the general audience. So before I get to Ricky Flex, let's introduce Big Mike. How are you, my friend? How are things?
Pretty good. How you doing?
Fantastic. I wouldn't say fantastic. It's great to see you, Big Mike, but honestly, this is like my least favorite part of the year. I'm going back to work. The kids are back. I'm teaching. Physically, I'm not doing well. Like, just straight up not doing well. This is the part of the year where I think I'm prepared to start coaching, go out in the 90-degree heat, start playing some soccer, thinking I can keep up with the 15-year-olds. But this is the moment where I'm pulling muscles. I'm not stretching. I go for 10-second sprints, and I got to take another 2 minutes off before I do anything else. Honestly, just put me in a casket right now. I need this week to end. I need Labor Day more than anyone can believe. Other than that, it's good to be on the podcast with you, Big Mike, even though I'm hurting both spiritually and physically.
That was deep.
Ricky Flick. I know. Sorry, it felt like there was like a awkward silence after that.
Here.
I looked at Mike and he was just like, maybe doctor is not okay. Maybe the doctor needs to see a doctor. All right. But Ricky Flex, how are you, my friend? Glad to have you back on.
I'm exhausted. I am exhausted because I have watched all 3 Lord of the Rings movies in the past 15 hours.
Oh, Jesus Christ. A hell of a marathon.
Exhausted. But I watched Fellowship, 2 Towers back to back, went to bed, woke up early before work, watched Return of the King, rewatched them all.
Edition?
Due to time, I didn't watch the extended editions, but I think I got a good grip on this draft coming up. And although my Lord of the Rings knowledge is probably better than the average human, it will not be as good, I will say, as you two. But I'm still excited for this draft, and especially after watching that marathon.
I also want to know, because I also went on this run this past week, 15 hours. That's like what? So 3 hours per
16,
movie.
17.
Yeah. I know the last 15 hours you spent watching Lord of the Rings. That's kind of bananas to think about. I couldn't sleep last night. I finished Return of the King at like 3 a.m. last night. Not a bad way to like fix your insomnia. Just watch some Return of the King. Before we get to it, like Big Mike, the reason we brought you on for this podcast, for this draft, I want you to just talk about your expertise when it comes to J.R.R. Tolkien's world and what's going on in Middle Earth. What's your relationship with Lord of the Rings?
I have a deep and personal relationship with Tolkien.
Intimate?
No.
Too far.
But yeah, he's the modern. He's the all modern fantasy is influenced by his work, and you can easily see it. Everyone tries to be different, like Game of Thrones, where everybody's a gray character. What's interesting is he had characters that were pure evil and pure good, and some gray, but it's a little bit different than like a lot. Like everybody wants to have like I know this isn't fantasy, so but like the Tony Sopranos, the Walter Whites, and then take it into fantasy, you have like let me see, just tons of Game of Thrones characters where they add color to maybe show that they're not all bad, that they're not all good. It's a little bit interesting seeing how his work has stood the test of time when it comes to that, and it's still so popular and still influential when it's really has pure rays of light and then shadows of darkness.
Literally, like the light and dark imagery in this trilogy, and even going into The Hobbit, it's like so obvious, but it makes like I just enjoy going on this journey, this odyssey, like literally through 3 movies. You could tell they were all filmed at the same time. They weave seamlessly together. The tone does not change. The light and dark that you're talking about remains the same. You've mentioned Lord of the Rings, what it means to like this fantasy realm. My brain's churning right now. I watch Dune pretty much once a month at this point, as long as it's streaming at HBO Max. Does what Tolkien did with like the fantasy realm kind of equate to the Dune novel and what that means and its influence on like the sci-fi realm? Is that kind of comparable?
I think it's even bigger than that. It's kind of like, I mean, fantasy had kind of died as a genre. It really had kind of stalled. Like if you look at all of the early 20th century, that's actually when like Pulp Fiction was becoming popular. You have all those 1920s writers like F. Scott Fitzgerald. You have writers writing about very realist novels like Hemingway. I forgot the name of his book, but it was about World War One. You would know. You're the history teacher. You know I'm referencing
Hemingway. Are you thinking of Vonnegut? No.
No,
Sorry.
no. But again, Vonnegut's another example. Like it's actually kind of similar to today. Like it was very realist. A lot of like all the horror that was going on in the world, and Tolkien brought back like he was influenced by like these Arthurian legends that were so popular, and then he brought it back to a modern audience. And it was he's actually one way he wrote Lord of the Rings is he was a linguist. He knew tons of languages. Like he knew old Scandinavian languages, old English. He was an expert in modern and middle age medieval languages, and he was also a devout Catholic. But he was totally obsessed with the Viking mythology. And so one way he wrote Lord of the Rings is he found a way to put the Viking mythology into his religion. And it's actually very evident in a lot of the works. And there's a lot of themes. The fact that Gandalf he dies and is risen again. There's a lot of themes that echo Return of the King. That's pretty obvious. It's Return of Christ. Like there's a lot of themes. Frodo having to carry this burden on Mount Doom, carrying the ring, like Jesus carrying the cross. So and the fact he uses these 3 characters is like the Trinity in Catholicism. So it's kind of interesting that he was able to take all these older themes and then bring it to the 20th century, and now it's even influential in the 21st century.
Jesus Christ, Mike. What do you memorize the Wikipedia pages of one J.R. Tolkien? You want to take it easy? You know me and Ricky Flicks haven't read a book in about a decade. Jesus. You make so many great points there. I don't even know where to start. Like, I think like you talk about the intricacies, like as storytelling is kind of developed. You brought up like Pulp Fiction and like the way stories are told. People almost got bored of like the straight up story, like a Lord of the Rings, like the good versus evil. People felt like they had to spice it up a little bit,
right?
Like these anti-heroes you talk about. But even within this world, there's so many details and intricacies of this story. It's just impressive. I'm like J.R. Tolkien, what he built, the languages that he develops, and what you're talking about inspired. I've always admired what he's done, along with George R.R. Martin. Like that kind of devotion to me is just banana lands. Like it just takes so much of your time to develop a made-up language, but also have it make sense to audiences. Like you just said it beautifully. I just gotta say that was amazing.
He was such a good linguist that such an expert, and I believe he was a professor of not just history, but also linguistics at Oxford. It could be Cambridge. I get it mixed up, so don't quote me on it. But one of those prestigious universities in England, and he wrote specifically to make Elvish a functioning language based off old medieval English and Scandinavian languages. So like it is a functioning language that you can study at universities now.
I'm also always impressed when you have like actors that are able to say this language and like act like they know what they're talking about. Like Orlando Bloom, I know people give him a lot of crap for his acting ability, but if you're able to sell me on this Elvish language, like the way he does and the way he interacts with Aragorn, it's just thoroughly impressive. Ricky Flex, I want to know your relationship with Lord of the Rings. Have you scoured the Wikipedia pages? Seems like Michael's done way more research than that, and he's probably written 3 or 4 essays, judging by his answers so far.
Fanfic.
Some college.
He's gonna be
yeah, exactly. Some fanfic from Michael. So I think, Mike, first of all, consider making your own world, right? Like the next. Almost like the next Tolkien, the next George R.R. Martin, the next J.K. Rowling. Just get something going, Mike. You're destined for greatness in that regard. But Ricky Flex, what's your relationship to Lord of the Rings?
I was gonna say you should probably teach a class about J.R.R. Tolkien. Jesus,
Professor.
Yeah, no, I can't say the same.
Try and follow that one, buddy.
I remember. So Return of the King comes out. It's in movie theaters. And I'm pretty sure it came out in December or sometime. I forget when it did come out, but I'm pretty sure. I remember I went to the movie theaters with our older sister, and
Jamie, look that up.
And I was like, "Oh, Return of the King! I want to go see that." And she goes, "Like, oh, you're not going again." Like, I don't even know how old I was, but definitely not allowed to. And I remember being transfixed, like, "Oh, Return of the King! Return of the King!" And I think it was because I originally, when I see Lord of the Rings, I don't think of the actual trilogy. I think of the animated Lord of the Rings that we used to watch as kids.
Renting from the library, baby. The public library always had it on deck.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's how I got involved with it at the start. And then I remember I saw Fellowship, and I got this video game for Christmas with the sword. I don't know if you guys remember. And then it's like the motion sensor with the game on the TV.
So it's like it was like the early PlayStation Move
before like Wii. Like Wii came out, and terrible technology. But like the scene in Fellowship where like the octopus creature like outside of the dwarf area, Macera, or whatever the heck it's called, and you're just swinging the sword against the TV, and that was like the hardest level. And even though it wasn't even the last level, you're just swinging the sword because the sensor can't pick it up.
It's like 10 minutes in. That was early PlayStation days. Like that might have not even been PlayStation 2.
It wasn't even been the original.
Oh, it was just the Lord of the Rings. Like
it was a separate thing. I'll have to find it and like tweet it out for everybody.
But that is a different time.
But that's my original relationship to Lord of the Rings. And yes, I don't know the wiki or any fanfic over there, but I love this. I do love this trilogy. This was a fun watch, even though I am exhausted. I might ramble on from time to time. I might start falling asleep, but you know what? I'm going to be so engaged listening to Big Mike talk about Tolkien, Lord of the Rings theories about Ring of Power and whatnot. I'm excited for this pod.
Yeah, I felt like for a second Mike just transcended, and it was like almost like Galadriel, like Cate Blanchett, just going on like a soliloquy, talking nonsense I don't understand, but I'm just transfixed on the person speaking at that time. That's how I felt right there. I also want to say, I initially, when I saw the original Lord of the Rings, we watched with our cousins, with Fellowship and the Two Towers.
Remember Palmer? He paused it when they blow up the wall. He's like, look at this guy. Look how much air he got. And then they rewound.
And I wanted to like that movie at that point because our cousin liked it so much, but he was a little bit older than us. He was a teenager. So when I watched it the first time, I wasn't exactly buying in. Like Big Mike seems like he was all in from the moment he saw it. If you don't believe me, just like rewind the podcast about 3 minutes. I do want to say over time, I've grown such an appreciation for this trilogy. I think it's the most successful trilogy ever made. I don't think it's for a younger audience. It can become boring, but I think you grow an appreciation for it as you get older. As you said, like the filmmaking and the details that go into this story being made, how fluidly it flows from Fellowship all the way to the end of Return of the King, and even the cinematography where it's shot. I believe it was New Zealand, right, Big Mike? New Zealand, where they're doing all this.
Yep.
Yeah, beautiful. You hear about the grueling shoot that it was, the amazing ensemble that accompanies Lord of the Rings, whether it be Ian McKellen, right, Viggo Mortensen in a breakout type of role, Kate Blanchett, like Liv Tyler, like the names go on and on. Orlando Bloom, right? The introduction of Elijah Wood. It's Christopher Lee. I could just keep on naming these guys, and you just say this was truly an achievement. And literally, when I watch this, any one of these movies could have won Best Picture. I truly believe that. And it almost is like how Ricky Flicks always has this take about Dune, where it's like, okay, wait till Dune Part 2, where people truly grow an appreciation for this franchise or this building franchise, culmination of the story, then reward it. That's exactly what was done with Return of the King. You want to talk about inspirations there, or I guess like comparisons. So before we get to the draft, we were initially just going to do Lord of the Rings characters, but Big Mike throws a wrench in all of this, right? And what is that wrench? We have categories now. And now my brain is in a pretzel. Let's introduce the categories to the audience. We have our first category to be drafted. We have Fellowship Member. All right. So you got to pick a character that's a part of the original Fellowship from the first movie. You have to pick a villain from either Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit. We got to mention The Hobbit is a part of this conversation and draft. Our third category, you got to pick a movie from either Lord of the Rings original trilogy or The Hobbit's trilogy. I dare you to take a Hobbit movie. Number 4 category, you have to take a Hobbit. All right, you got to take a Hobbit. It's play such a central role in the story. The underdogs. We come from a short family, right? We'll just excuse Ricky Flicks from this conversation. But yeah, me and Big Mike, we got to show respect with the category to the Hobbits. And then finally, you got to pick a supporting character that's remaining outside the Fellowship. Any questions on the categories, Ricky Flicks, before we get going?
Yeah, so like supporting character has to be outside the Fellowship, but it can't be like a supporting villain either.
Okay.
Or no?
Because
there's a lot of small villains, like small minor role villains that are awesome in this trilogy, or I guess 6 movies.
So I think I know who you're talking about. I think that person plays as either. You can have, I think, a villain that also is a supporting character. There's a specific character. I think we're all thinking of this person that could be labeled as a villain, but at the same time could be a supporting character. Depends what side of the bed that he wakes up on, to be honest. Okay. If we're thinking of the same guy.
I think I know who you're thinking of. I was thinking of other people, but
okay. Oh, so you're thinking of maybe like minor actions where
supporting characters, like really supporting.
I think we'll just get
how I'm doing the category.
Yeah, I think there are some also characters that become possessed by the ring that aren't natural villains, but they act like in a villainous way for a short portion of the movie. That's not a villain, right? We're talking about someone that has a long-standing antagonistic type of role, hero versus villain, right? Storyline there. All right, Big Mike, any comments before we start?
Let's do it.
All right, Ricky Flicks. So it begins. Ricky Flicks has the spinner with all 3 names. All right. For this draft, Ricky Flicks is going to spin, and then we're going to determine the draft order by who the spinner lands on first. So, Ricky Flicks, you are spinning. He is presenting. You see it on your YouTube right now, hopefully.
Oh, it's like
all right. What's going on? Is that me?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I will be going second in this draft. Dr. O is going second in this draft. It's now down to Ricky Flicks and Big Mike for the first and third pick.
To the guest.
All right. Big Mike, you get to choose. Are you drafting first or third?
I'll go third.
Wow. I am shocked by that. I was anticipating differently. So that gives Ricky Flicks the number 1 overall pick in this draft. Let's get going. Ricky Flicks, you have the 5 categories. You're officially on the clock. We got a wrench in the plans here. We're kind of helter-skelter right now. We're running like chickens with our heads cut off. Big Mike is supremely confident. Look at him right now. Jesus Christ. He's like, I don't want to tease any characters. I'm going to do a comparison, but I won't. Ricky Flex on the clock. What do you got?
Categories throws a wrench in my plans.
Hundo P.
Throws a wrench. Before, if it was a character draft, I wanted the number one pick so bad.
Michael chose
Now
violence
it's like,
today.
Now it's like, oh, like one fellowship, like you're gonna get one of them. You're gonna get one Hobbit. Like you're also gonna get one of the movies. I'm in flux. I did not want the first pick.
I know what I would do.
Do I go best available? Right? Do I go Bill Parcells? Is always pick the best player available, or do I go, you know what, take a limited category? And I'm gonna do limited category. This might be a hot take, but I think the villains in Lord of the Rings aren't necessarily like all time.
Fool of a took. That's ridiculous.
I think there's one that I will take because I want him over everyone else, and that's Gollum.
Wow. Okay.
I don't want any of these other villains. I'm going to take Gollum with the first pick. Sounds terrible to say out loud because he's not nearly that value, but I don't view the villains as highly here. Thoughts?
So, Mike, where do you have Gollum in your like rankings of like favorite characters? Just put aside like the categories. Where does Gollum lie?
Personally, I'm not a huge fan of Gollum, but I guess he's a complex kind of character. So overall, objectively speaking, he's a good character. So I would, looking at it from that angle, he's probably, because Lord of the Rings lacks so many like sympathetic villains, he's probably the one villain that's actually not pure evil. Like he was good at one point, becomes corrupted by the ring, kills his best friend. Like and then he longs for the ring. He always wants to come back. I would put him top 3 because like he does help Frodo and Sam, and then he ultimately goes back and goes to his death. But it's just like a very complicated character, not this pure villain.
That's what I wanted to get to. I'm like, does this character truly belong in the villain category? I say it does.
Yeah.
He does. Like he is acting against the ideals at points, I guess half the time, literally, when he is with Frodo and Samwise. All right. Sorry, teasing a pick, whatever. We got to talk about those two if we're bringing up Gollum.
Everybody knows who they are.
And Gollum's origin is just naturally evil. And we've seen people that have become possessed by the ring, but not to the point of Gollum. Like Gollum, I think this is a good pick for the villain because I agree with you. It's not I think there are 3 that I targeted. I think there are good villains in this story and that all have like they bring a unique, I guess, flavor to Lord of the Rings. You know what I thought of when I was rewatching this? I think this is like an early take on like mental health. Like I think when mental health themes were not a big part in movies, like he clearly suffers from schizophrenia, you know, like he
yes.
And at that same time, like this movie comes out in 2000. Oh, well, so first appearance in Two Towers, 2002. What movie also debuts that year and has a very famous villain played by a famous actor? Spider-Man, right? We have Green Goblin, Willem Dafoe. I kept finding myself comparing that villainous role to what Norman Osborn was in Spider-Man. Do you ever make that comparison, Big Mike?
No, but I never crossed my mind. But that makes sense.
How about you, Flex? Oh, sorry. Did I cut you off, Mike?
No, but I love it. It makes sense. I think Andy Serkis, what he did here is very similar to like Willem Dafoe and Green Goblin. I love that analogy. And I think just diving deeper on my comments with the villains here, I'm not saying the villains are bad, but like compared to the other categories, it's just not as strong. Like the fellowship so we're each going to get a fellowship. So a top 3 fellowship, you're automatically going to get. I'm comfortable having any of those top 3 because I feel like I'd rather take a villain here that I feel comfortable getting versus if you both take a villain, it's like, all right, my 2 and 3 are pretty weak, I would say, versus my 2 or 3 fellowships. So like I would just say, if we're power ranking the categories, this is my lowest power ranking.
Early age of motion capture also, I think, is big with this. and one of the best motion capture actors we've ever had is Andy Serkis, and this is kind of like his debut in that type of realm. And this is where we first took him very seriously as an actor. And also, Gollum is a strong enough character that he was, obviously, like he was a part of the reason we got the Hobbit films made, I would say. Like, because you have to have some motivation for the Hobbit to be made. Yes, we have like $1 billion franchise with the original Lord of the Rings, and we have an Oscar-winning franchise with Lord of the Rings. There's a fan base that wants the Hobbit, but at the same time, you have to have some overlap with characters, and you need to have Andy Serkis as Gollum in the Hobbit. So I think this plays for a long-term, like franchise-spanning type of deal. All right, so I think that plays a big time role. All right, so it's on to me. Number 2 pick. I'm going movie, just because there's 3. I want to get the one that I want, and this is going to be interesting because I am not going to pick Return of the King. After watching it, I'm actually going to go Fellowship of the Ring as the best movie in this franchise, and it's going to be the number 2 overall pick. I love the exploration of the Shire in the beginning. I think it's an electric opening. I love Gandalf's interactions with the hobbits themselves. I love the moment that we go, I think it's Eldaron. Where are the elves, Mike?
Rivendell.
Yeah, that was it. Sorry.
You're getting confused with Elrond.
Elrond, right? Hugo Weaving character.
Yeah.
Right? Rivendell. When they come for the first time, you have Frodo and Sam questioning, like, what are we doing here? Let's go back to the Shire. And then you have like that Avengers circling type of moment where you see Legolas for the first time. We only know Aragorn as Strider at that point. Here comes Boromir. Gandalf's in the mix, and that's where you finally have that moment where they're all arguing. What do we do about this ring? And then Frodo's like, I will take it. I will take it. And at that point, like, I'm all in on that movie. You shall not pass moment. Merry and Pippin screwing everything up, and then the guys cleaning up their mess. I love the Fellowship. I know it doesn't bring everything together at the end, right? But I think they ended it on pretty good terms, and it's a good way to continue the story. It lends to the next movie where Frodo and Sam are on their way. They find Gollum, and then it kind of the men go their separate ways following the Fellowship. So I'm going Fellowship of the Ring. Hot take, I know. It doesn't have the huge battle sequence either, but that's my movie.
That's just to jump in real quick. I would not have picked Fellowship because, like, when you think Lord of the Rings, you're thinking the quest and battle sequences are huge battles. That's always for me. And yes, like this one doesn't have that, and I wouldn't have picked it because it doesn't have those. But I still like don't blame you for saying that's your favorite because again, it's the first one, right? You always have like an emotional attachment to the first one, and that Avengers moment. It's like again, 13 months from when they first started the Fellowship to the end of Return of the King, and that's the only time until the very end they're all together. So like when the band's all together for the first time, there's a different feel to it. And there's characters that are alive that aren't alive at the end that are together at that point as well. And it's just a different feel. And I totally understand why that is your favorite. Personally, not mine, but I think it's still a good pick.
That actually has grown on me as I've gotten older. And one is the acting. It's a traditional movie in that it's not reliant on action.
Yes, I was going to mention this.
It's relying on acting and interactions. And you actually, from the first scene, you believe Frodo and Gandalf are like best friends that have known each other for years. And then
Bilbo.
you see, yeah. And it's actually, that movie was extremely important because believe it or not, these films are so well respected now. Back when they were filming them, even when they first announced they were making them, there was a huge backlash, kind of like Rings of Power is facing. People are like, oh, you can't do it justice. These movies are unfilmable. It's too much. It's going to be a disaster. So that it really had to set the stage. And what's key is that they spent time in the Shire, but they spent it to get it right. And that's because the Shire it represented Tolkien's ideal society. His whole
utopia.
He wanted England to go back to its farm kind of agricultural roots. And the orcs actually represented a little bit of like the industrialization that England had gone through, and how he was really against allegory, but a lot of people saw similarities with how the machine for war was being built with the orcs, and Tolkien was a World War I vet. He fought in the trenches, actually did, saw people die from mustard gas. And then also, remember, First Hobbit came out right before 1939. In 1938, Nazi Germany was rising. So he, all in all, going back to my main point, is like he wanted the Shire was really his purity of these books, and the fact that they got it right off the bat gave confidence to also the people that were doubting Jackson and that whole making of these films, and they knew that they were in the right hands and that the tone was perfect.
Couple excellent points there, Big Mike. I want to go to something you said earlier regarding the reliance on action sequences. I feel like after the ending of the Two Towers, people were looking at Return of the King, and then you hear that line at the end of the Two Towers where he says, "Battle of Helm," like Gandalf says, "The battle at Helm's Deep is over. Right now, it's time for the Battle of Middle Earth," and we're like, "Battle of Middle Earth, let's go!" You know, it's just like, what's gonna happen? How are they gonna outdo this? It almost feels like, to do another historical comparison. And Tolkien grew up was around early 20th century. The Fellowship of the Ring feels like pre-World War I, the offense that set the war in motion. And it feels like there's so many references, like consequences of war. That's a huge part of like Lord of the Rings. I just feel like this one does a great job bringing you into this world. All right, these different kingdoms, and I just think it did a great job setting up what we're going to see for the foreseeable future. And I think you're right. The tone nails it. The tone nails it, and it has you hooked. You feel like after you finish Fellowship, you just got to go to the next movie, right? You just got to keep going. Yeah. It's a natural progression if you just keep watching, because you could just have a 9-hour watch, no credits, go. You know, it picks up right where the last one left off. People argue obviously the slow pace of Lord of the Rings, but it's a long odyssey. It's a long journey that you're going through. And the audience, if you buy in, it's such an incredible experience. So with that being said, Big Mike, we're on to your first round pick, third overall.
All right. So just want to do one more fact about the Fellowship. Fun fact, the book actually ends before the last scenes in the Fellowship. It begins with Boromir's death. In the Two Towers, that's how the book begins.
I like the ending, though, with Boromir's death. I think that actually works better.
It was a little bit. Jackson did make a few changes, and that was one of them. But
a little Hollywood
out very well. So I'm gonna go with a Hobbit, and I am gonna go with Samwise Gamgee.
Wow!
And I will tell you why. Not just because I love Rudy, but also Sam is really is one character that is like, I don't want to say mortal because they all are mortal, but he doesn't have anything special about him. He's just a regular guy trying to help his friend. And like the fact that he was able to take the ring and not be corrupted by it shows he is actually the purest out of everyone in every film. In fact, Gandalf even didn't want to take the ring, and Sam was able to give it back to Frodo, no questions asked. Shows like how loyal a character this was. And it plays into my earlier point at the beginning of the podcast, how influential these movies are and these books are. Sam in Game of Thrones is named after Samwise Gamgee because that's George R.R. Martin's favorite character in Lord of the Rings, because of how influential that character is. And you can see the similarities are evident. It's very obvious when you look at Sam and then Sam. You know, Samwise is like, you could see like George built the whole model for Sam in Game of Thrones after him. So and I think he's just, I think he gets slept on a lot in terms of diehard fans know his importance, but I think the general audience doesn't realize how important a character he is.
I'll be a general audience member here. Sam saved me, like just on his latest rewatch. How annoying Frodo sometimes is. Sam like balances me out, and
he's a voice of hope.
I really like that, because Frodo, Elijah Wood, his tone of voice sometimes just gets to me. And Sam, Sean Astin, sometimes like him just getting agitated, it's like, that's how I feel, but in a different way. So I really appreciate that. And then the other thing I would say is that throughout the Two Towers and Return of the King, Gollum always is like, fat hobbit, fat hobbit. And every time I feel terrible. And
Spilled the
again,
crumbs on him.
spilled
Asshole.
the crumbs on him. You ate the bread, fat hobbit. And I felt so bad.
Fat shaming.
And I was just like, man, but it also like, I feel bad for Sean Astin because if this was a normal trilogy, you're not filming for over a year, 3 movies in a row. You can get in shape as like Sean Astin outside. You can get in shape and not get fat shamed, but it actually played a part in the story. So I just always felt bad. I always think of that watching these movies, especially on this rewatch.
He's not only the most likable character in the history of Lord of the Rings, he might be the most likable character in the history of movies. I'm not even kidding. Like I want to be like Sam, so selfless and probably the best friend that anyone could ever have. And you're right. Like the best parts of like the sequels where you look at when we get outside the fellowship, everyone gets split up. I don't look forward to those Frodo scenes as much. And Gollum's very unpredictable, but Sam is that steady rock where like I watch him and he's the reason I'm truly enjoying those scenes.
Yeah.
And he is the most emotional aspect of this movie. It's not when Aragorn returns the Gondor for me. It's not even the end. Well, it could be actually the end when the hobbits are finally like accepted and they go to Gondor to greet Aragorn after all of that's happened. But like Sam just like makes me want to cry. He's so nice.
He's
I truly mean that.
Unrelenting optimism. You could clearly see he's the heart of Lord of the Rings.
The casting is perfect.
He's the viewer. He's like, you have this hope, like things are gonna work out, everything will be okay.
Symbol of hope.
He's that reader's perspective. He's the viewer's perspective. Like everything's gonna end up being okay. Like
that moment where I think it's either beginning Return of the King or end of the Two Towers. It's Frodo and Sam walking with Gollum. And Sam says, Frodo, I wonder if they're going to be like telling stories about us, about this journey and things like that. And then Frodo's like, and his like he's bashing his eyes, like he's like bashful, like one of the 12 dwarfs. He's like, I wonder what they're going to say about brave Sam and things like that. And I'm just like, oh man, like that bromance there is just like, that's what makes those scenes so watchable. Yeah, Ricky. I also was gonna say, like, one of the moments also, like, small little moment that like has me also emotional. He's like talking about the food. He's like, "We'll have just enough," and then Frodo's like, "For what?" And you're like, "For the way home." And I'm like, God damn it! Exactly. Like, I'm getting choking up thinking about it. Like, I want to have that optimism in my life that Sam does. Literally, yeah. Go ahead.
But then in Return of the King, when the lava's coming down after the ring goes, he goes, I don't think we're making it home. The first time he's like not optimistic. And then that's like, oh, man, that also is hitting you, but in a different way. But then
if he died at the end, I swear to God.
Honestly, no, but another part I was just going to say, I feel bad for Sam is like when the ring goes down, like Sauron, the tower falls and everything, Return of the King, spoiler alert. But everyone's like in the battles, like Frodo. I'm like, bro, Frodo almost cost us. He almost cost us at the final stage. It's like Isildur. He almost
Sam wins unsung hero.
If Gollum wasn't there, the ring would probably still like Sauron wins.
Frodo folds like origami in that.
I want to say one thing about that scene, Ricky. That it's one thing that's like unintentionally hilarious is when they're chanting Frodo, and then you can see the next scene's like Frodo. They like cry. The next
right.
Because they realize, oh shit, he's dead.
And then Gandalf's like, yo, Eagles, help me out once again.
All right. We got to keep moving with the draft. We got sucked into Sam talk. Personally, he's the top 3. He's top 3 character for me. Like I had him at number 3, number 1 Hobbit easily. But Mike, lead us in the second round, 4th overall. Go ahead.
All right, I'm going back with another heavyweight pick, Fellowship. I'm going Aragorn.
Damn.
So, yeah. I mean, enough said. I mean, Viggo Mortensen stopped acting after this. Besides Hidalgo, like his career was made. I mean, it shows how great a performance he gave, but like he really was he actually was a bit more pure version of Aragorn than in the books. In the books, Aragorn's actually kind of arrogant. The name, but
True.
he's actually a little bit arrogant. He knows he's the king, but like he's not as humble. But like just the the just the character arc from him as Strider to becoming that leader to eventually becoming the king, and like when they first introduce him in the and the pub, it's kind of like the Western in the saloon,
Mhm.
the badass, like who the hell is this guy, this stranger from out of town? It's like this dude is like the most badass person you're ever gonna meet. And then like him leading the army at the end too. Just he's willing to sacrifice his life just to give Frodo a little bit more time at the gates of Mordor, just so they can accomplish their mission, even though if he knows it's basically certain death. He could have called it quits after winning the battle of the Pelennor Fields outside Gondor's gate. But no, he's like, our mission isn't accomplished. We need to help Frodo. And he even says right before they charge, he whispers for Frodo, like Steve Rogers, no offense. This is like this is such a huge moment. And then
Middle Earth's ass.
this isn't like Avengers Assemble. This is like the fate of the world. I mean, like it's and then at the end, when they're at Gondor, he's like, my friends, you bow to no one. That humbleness, it just shows like how great a leader he's become. And yeah, but then there's all the other obvious answers. I'm sure most people would have picked Aragorn, but
that's what separates him and the Fellowship compared to everybody else is his leadership. Honestly,
Yeah.
Everyone seems to be kind of in it for themselves. You got Gimli versus Legolas at one point. Boromir just wants to make Gondor great, using the ring to do so. Gandalf is kind of in and out with everybody. You kind of don't know how to read him in the initial Fellowship of the Ring. Like, and Aragorn kind of brings the team together. He is a true leader. He's the heir to Gondor. Like, he is the king. Like, he is going to bring everyone together, right? I do want to say also, tracking abilities, right? Putting his ear to the ground, being able to use detective skills to like say this happened here and how long ago. It reminded me of Pattinson's Batman. But as I was watching it again, I'm like, he is just knows everything about what's happened, and it doesn't matter when it happened as long as there is a whiff of a scent. Also, the girls like go crazy for him, right? But he's also the loyal dude, and he's just like, I am devoted to Arwen, right? Like that's his girl, no matter what. He's the GOAT, dude. He was easily my number one character.
Yeah.
Ricky, what's yours, Ricky?
He wasn't.
Wow.
Oh,
wow.
He
I thought he was easily.
So I think he's the best character in Lord of the Rings.
Arc is
But
crazy.
would I have picked him as my number one Lord of the Rings character? No. And I'll explain whenever I pick.
Ooh, that's
just
spicy.
because you guys have always I think you hit the nail on the head with Aragorn. So I'm going to go off the beaten path here. Viggo Mortensen, 64, 63-ish. Been nominated for 3 Oscars, all after Lord of the Rings. He's one of the guys I think he's going to get an Oscar at some point.
That's a hot take. Yeah, you're right.
I think he gets one. And Captain Fantastic 2 years before that.
That's a deep cut. I don't know that movie.
I think he hasn't been off.
2017.
Do you think he's been offered like a superhero role in like Marvel or something? Like we gotta get Aragorn like in this,
I don't want him to. Like he's
right,
but
I'm just asking. Like, do you think like they've thought about that? Like, I mean, huge franchise, The Lord of the Rings, bring him back for like the next biggest franchise, like 20 years later.
Yeah, I bet Marvel has, but I really think Viggo Mortensen. He's probably one of the most underrated actors that no one ever talks about. And again, Lord of the Rings was so long ago, so it's like, oh, and now he's doing movies like Crimes of the Future and 13 Lives that are just snuck under the radar. I think one of these days he's gonna get an Oscar because he's so talented. And I think Lord of the Rings, like, yeah, this is before his like Oscar nominee run. And also he was a stud before Lord of the Rings too. I'm not trying to say he wasn't, but I think this just put him on another pedestal. Now it's like Mike, you like mentioned how like he kind of is like he is under the radar, but it's like, hey, like this guy probably will get I think he will get an Oscar someday. So I think like just to spin this conversation a little bit, that's kind of like my hot take coming out of this podcast.
That's something, as long as he's keeping up his work. I don't know if he's going to be doing that because, like, obviously Big Mike talked about, like, he took that long hiatus after Lord of the Rings, but that kind of makes sense because that was such a grueling shoot, you know. And then like look at like what Orlando Bloom did with his career afterwards. He's going in blockbuster after blockbuster after that. It doesn't seem like Viggo Mortensen takes that route, even though it seems like he could have, you know. All right, on to me. I feel like the Fellowship member is deep. You could pick like up to like
Right.
5 different characters there. Villain, I might go there next. Movie I got Hobbit. I don't want to take the next person here. I think it's also kind of a short list because there's few like Hobbits that really stick with you, and no one really compares to Sam. Like Sam is the guy. And Mike already took it, obviously. That might have been a great first round pick. I kind of regret that I didn't do that. If I take a supporting character, does he has to be outside of the Fellowship?
Yeah. Unless there's one, I think you'd be allowed to take.
I think there's like 3 you could take that are outside the Fellowship, that are in the Fellowship that could count as kind of
3
supporting. Yeah.
All right. I feel like
I'm not going to say them, but I think they're obvious.
I feel like a supporting character shouldn't be in the Fellowship.
I do feel like that, but there's
because
like
there's a category for the Fellowship.
Yeah.
There's like 3 you can make a point. You can make a argument for.
Yeah, let's just keep it simple.
Yeah.
I'm going to go member. I don't like. This is easily my number 2. I think there's 2. There's 2 of the best characters. I mentioned Samwise Gamgee, who's my number 3 favorite character. I'm going Gandalf. You got it.
Yeah.
Like you have no choice. I'm not letting this slip to Ricky Flex. I know the Fellowship. I have like 2 other guys who are going neck and neck for like 4A, 4B for my favorite character. Ricky Flex will have to choose between those 2 eventually, if he's going to go with those 2. But
I think you took one of his. Look at his reaction.
So the question becomes, do we count Gandalf the Grey and Gandalf the White as 2 different people?
Darn, I was gonna try to spin Gandalf the White's outside the Fellowship. So
that's a good point. That you can.
I can't.
Oof.
No, Gandalf's one person. We can't do that.
Because like I would like, do I take he's not is he a supporting character? Like Gandalf the White? Do I take him as a supporting character? But I think Gandalf is just Fellowship.
Yeah,
Gandalf's just Fellowship. And I love Gandalf because like his natural comparison with so many people is Dumbledore, like same time, same older actors that are like attacking that type of role. And we got like this fantastical type of franchise here. But like Gandalf is kind of like smug sometimes. He's funny. And the transformation into from the Fellowship to Gandalf the White is so glorious. 2 Towers, like that moment is like literally top 5 favorite moments in the history of movies. Battle of Helm's Deep, when he is riding down the hill, taking on the orcs. Easily one of the best moments. The "You shall not pass" moment from Fellowship is one of the most iconic movie lines in the history of movies. I love that you talked about his relationship with Frodo. He is there from the start, and he's there at the end. Yes, he takes a little hiatus in the beginning of 2 Towers, but the movie picks up when Gandalf comes back. You could not have an entire movie without Gandalf because he means too much to everyone, all the characters, and the audience. And he is the wizard that everyone counts on when the power of man, of elf, of dwarf cannot achieve something. And he just oozes swag when he's Gandalf the White. I love when he comes back as Gandalf the White. He's like, "Oh, Gandalf. I am not Gandalf. I am Gandalf the White." Like as if like Gandalf the Grey was just some schmuck, you know?
No, yeah,
like,
he goes like Gandalf the Grey. Ah, yes, that's what they used to call me.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, this is why we have Mike on the pod here. But I thought it was 1A, 1B. But honestly, I would have gone Aragorn. Gandalf's easily the next one on the board.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and then it's kind of funny because like Gandalf, I mean, like he was smoking the halfling's leaf all the time. Gandalf the Grey. He was kind of like just doing cheap parlor tricks, like hanging out with his buds, doing fireworks and stuff. It's then he actually has like this sacrifice against the Balrog, and he has that, of course, epic moment. And then it basically when he tells him, "Run, you fools!" It's like don't waste this.
As he like quote unquote falls to his death. You know, he
Yeah.
has some like sly comedy to him that's so goddamn funny.
Yeah, and then he just transforms into like he says like so I was mentioning about how this is like Tolkien reconciling his Catholicism and Viking mythology. In Lord of the Rings, there is one God, and he's the one that sent. So in the wizards, they are actually celestial like beings. They're like angels, and he tells Gandalf, "Your business isn't finished," and he sends him back as Gandalf the White, kind of like Christ, you know. So there's that that parallel, and then you can just see how he's transformed into just like this wisdom figure. Like he says one of the best lines I think I've ever heard, and it's directly from the books. When I think it's Mary, is it? No, it's Pippin. It's no, sorry, Pippin's with Eowyn. It's Mary in Gondor at Return of the King at the battle at the there he's like saying I'm scared to die, and then Gandalf is like very calmly just says like death is just a journey, another path on this journey, one we all must take.
So religious, bro. So biblical.
Like, I know. It's just like what a fucking line. Like
yeah,
it's like you're gonna die someday. Might as well be for a cause, but it's gonna be okay.
100%.
That's
great. Amazing. Yeah.
I will also say, again, this isn't related to the pick. Just rewatching these movies, that I think rewatching them, they did a terrible job actually, like explaining how he came back. I did it. That was not clear at all.
It's when a lot of
he tells the story.
verbal. Yeah.
But
you
like
have to be listening.
Even with the subtitles on, it didn't make sense.
No one's like listening to that full story.
Right.
You just accept the fact he's a freaking wizard. He's back, baby.
Exactly.
You know?
That's a lot.
It was like Harry Potter coming back at Deathly Hallows Part 2.
Right.
You know, it's like that. Like once again, another parallel to a different franchise.
But what I was gonna say is like Lord of the Rings, you just accept it, you know, and it's okay. And I think that's fine with this trilogy because it's so good and so put together and such a spectacle. And again, Gandalf was my number one, and I think you guys all hit it. Everything revolves around him, and you can make the case for Aragorn, but it's really Gandalf. He's putting the pieces together. He's the mastermind behind everything, and I think Ian McKellen is the heart and soul of Lord of the Rings. I think he is, and not Aragorn and Viggo Mortensen. So that's why he was my number one. I think his performances throughout, not only in Lord of the Rings, but also The Hobbit, and just his performances throughout, I think he is actually the heart and soul of Lord of the Rings, and also the fantastical side of it as well. I think also draws an aspect of it. He was my number one. I was actually like, really, you got my hopes up, Doc. I thought I was going to grab it, steal it, and now I think you sealed that I'm going to lose this draft by a lot. I will be firmly in third.
He is the best performer in these movies. It seems like first of all, this whole movie's amazingly cast. And I think you could not have picked someone more perfect for Gandalf, right? That calm composure that he has, that sly comedy where he is literally the funniest member of this movie, probably alongside Merry and Pippin, right? He might be the funniest dude.
I have one person that might have been able to put in a competing performance, but we can talk about that later. When it comes up.
All right, and then obviously Gollum's in the mix there too because he's such an eccentric character, and I don't know if anyone could have pulled off the movements that Andy Serkis did in this movie. It just seemed like he became an animal, like for this, like truly.
Yep.
There is someone else. Michael, you're right. I'm thinking of the same person. I believe Ricky Flicks, you're up now to end the second round.
Okay, so I'm not doing well here. I'm not doing well. Yeah, I think you guys took all the least annoying, sorry. I'm thinking supporting characters and Hobbit. I'm going 2 picks here. And I think for Hobbit, a lot of them just annoy me. They really do. But there's a couple that don't. And then supporting characters that aren't in the Fellowship or a villain, right? I think if you look at the screen time, okay, you could nitpick here. I'm trying to look for someone that had some screen time, not too little, but again, obviously not too much because we're talking about supporting characters. So I'll first go supporting character because this will look funny on the graphic next to Gollum. I'll go Treebeard. Treebeard.
Oh my God.
And
Ricky,
then
I was not expecting you to pick that.
I can't
And
tell
then-
if this is like the best pick of the draft or the worst pick, to be honest.
Dude,
And
that's
then-
a deep cut. That's a deep cut.
It is. I had it on my board, but I didn't know we were doing like all these different categories. Continue.
And then my third pick, Hobbit. I'm going Martin Freeman's Bilbo, the Hobbit.
Classic.
Oh, you had to
Yeah.
define it? Show some respect. Rest in peace.
I will-
The Lord of the Rings, Bilbo.
Wait, but I get Bilbo
Rest in
no
peace,
matter
what's his
what
name?
here.
You said Lord of the Rings, Bilbo. What's his name, Dave?
I don't know.
Show some respect.
I think Ricky showed less respect by going the other character, but I
No,
guess
okay,
arguably.
okay.
yeah,
I'm picking Bilbo in general, but I think Martin Freeman, I do like that Bilbo. I
much
really
more
do.
likable.
Yes, I really do like Martin Freeman's Bilbo. I think that was actually one of the light spots in the Hobbit trilogy. And I like Martin Freeman.
Fantastic performance.
Yeah, so those are my two picks.
I think he did a great job. I mean, Bilbo. Martin Freeman. He was like, if you've read The Hobbit, it's like what you expect Bilbo, and also Bilbo makes Frodo look like such a pussy. Like Bilbo's
Yes,
fighting in
yes,
battles and shit. He's like, I'm gonna die. All right, well, let me go up against
He
this
just
dragon.
handles himself
And
better, to be
Frodo
honest.
is just like constantly worrying. Like Bilbo, like this guy's the badass here.
Yeah, Bilbo was just a much cooler character, more fun to actually watch on screen, and you weren't just constantly annoyed to listen to him speak. 100%. Treebeard, I had him. Honestly, like, it's cool how he contributes to the battle, right, at Helm's Deep afterwards, but I also think like he wasn't sold on helping out without Merry and Pippin. Without Merry and Pippin, he doesn't get involved. He's kind of a
Right.
pussy too. Like, I don't know. Like, I just don't think he was.
He doesn't
in
know
on it.
better.
He's
No,
like,
it's
he
kinda-
doesn't understand the stakes of it, and like he just didn't think it was a big deal if they didn't fight and they didn't know the potential he had. But in terms of a powerful like figure and like an X factor for the battle, totally like worthy pick.
He had to see it to believe it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
and
think
they go as he goes too.
I think one thing you have to, I think what Tolkien was trying to show is like, and the films in general, it's very easy to dismiss evil when it doesn't have an direct impact on you. What makes him turn the tide is not Merry and Pippin. He sees all these trees all these other ends that he knew dead. So it kind of shows like when
That's
there
true.
is evil in the world and you turn a blind eye to it, it will impact you in ways that you aren't even seeing because you turned a blind eye.
Consequences of war.
It's like, so you cannot just stand and do nothing, which is what Pimpin argues with him. He's like, you're part, like David said, you're part of this world. Like, this is going to impact you. And I think Treebeard is a great like example of just like the everyday people who say like, oh, it has no effect on me. Like, actually, if it's great enough, it will, and it will actually have a very deeply personal effect on you.
Excellently said. All right, now we go back to me, middle of the third round. I need a villain. I need a hobbit and a supporting character. So, I'm going to save hobbit because you guys have both picked hobbits. I'm leaning villain right now. I'm looking at my supporting characters as well. Sorry, I'm taking too long. You know what? This is going to be my only pick from The Hobbit. The villain. Going with Smaug.
I know. That's a great one. Smaug.
Smaug.
Smaug
That
or
was my number
Smaug?
2.
I have to.
Smaug or
'Cause-
Smaug?
I said Smaug. Smaug.
Smaug.
First off, when I think of Smaug, I think of that video of Benedict Cumberbatch motion capture acting like an absolute lunatic. Right? Have you seen this, Michael?
No, but the voice he did was so compelling. It was like so evil. It was great.
He does the motion for the dragon.
Yeah. That's crazy. I didn't know that. I have to watch that.
I think it's in the
Let's tweet it out.
spirit of Gollum and what they were able to accomplish in the original Lord of the Rings. When he does the motion capture, Ricky, you have to send it to him. It's like one of my favorite like behind the scenes moments for any movie. And it's also, there's so many memes that can go along with that type of moment. But the Benedict Cumberbatch voice, this is kind of like before Benedict Cumberbatch wasn't Doctor Strange yet. Like he was like he was
He was just
Khan.
Sherlock.
I think he was Khan, I think, around that time
Mhm.
when he
Yeah.
did Star Trek Into Darkness, but people still weren't really sure what he was. I think he was
Came
in
out
the
the
middle
same
of
year.
Sherlock, but just the voice, how menacing it was. I feel like I wanted to pick Smaug instead of the Lord of the Rings villains because a lot of the major Lord of the Rings villains, like the one that I'm thinking of in person that I would take, like the person that actually is acting, does not have the impact, right, as the overall villain of Lord of the Rings, and he doesn't have a figure, it's just the presence, and you can argue like that is like someone to take, and it is a character in and of himself, and he
Iconic.
did have a human form. I think everyone knows who I'm talking about if you've ever seen Lord of the Rings, but to have that physical presence there, and that is like the part of the Hobbit that is like from the first movie that was it first movie? Am I right? Or is
Second
it Desolation of Smog? Is that
Yeah,
second
and then
one?
a little bit of Battle of the Armies.
But that's that moment, and where it's basically like Jaws, and that's one of the most like memorable scenes of The Hobbit. Like I didn't even finish the Battle of the Five Armies, to be honest. I just wasn't that sucked in. But after watching these Lord of the Rings 3 movies, I'm gonna start watching The Hobbit again. An Unexpected Journey I'm watching tonight, already on the docket. But like that Jaws impact and that influence for The Hobbit's why I'm picking it. Amazing.
When you said the villain, like when you were talking about the villains, that's exactly why I went villain number 1. And again, the villains aren't bad. It's just like there's there's a few issues, just like if you want it on your draft, like drafting versus these other categories, it's like it's just not up to the same level. And it's because these levels, they're such highly regarded. Like these movies, these characters, these supporting characters, Hobbit, like whatever you want to say, like there's deeper and physical forms and whatever you want to say.
So, Mike, do you think Smog? Do you have that as like your number 2? Is it down the line? What were you thinking?
Easily, I think he's the best villain in all the Hobbit movies. Like I forgot the orc's name, but like wasn't he's the one that kills Thorin's whole bloodline. I forgot his name.
I like that villain though.
I think Smog though, it's just like what? It's like the way he's talking with Frodo. It's playing with your food. He's toying with him, knowing I can kill you at any second, but I'm just gonna mess with you anyways for fun because I can. That's like pure evil. It's just like,
and the actual voice, voice,
so good.
And so then when he gets angered, he just fucking comes out and he's like, "Oh, you care about this town? Watch, I'm gonna come back for you, but I'm gonna kill them first."
He talks. It's like not just a dragon. He talks shit to you. Like it's great.
He's like, oh, because he like looks back. That's how the movie ends. It's like, holy shit, so terrifying. Actually, it built up Battle of the Five Armies. It's like, oh, okay,
yes,
Desolation Smog, way better than Unexpected Journey. Battle of Five Armies, disappointing because it built it up. But like when he turns back, he's like, oh, you care about these people? Well, say goodbye because I'm about to have some barbecue. And then I'm gonna have you for dessert.
You remember so many of the details from the Hobbit trilogy. It's amazing.
Say what you want about the Hobbit trilogy. Unexpected Journey, we saw that together. Our dad fell asleep famously for most of the movie, but we saw the second one, Desolation of Smog, with some friends. But don't tell me you didn't get chills at the end there, and you were like, "Wow,
Smog was the reason worth going to the movie theater for that movie."
Like that was the movie. So you could hate on the trilogy, even the Battle of the Five Armies, but Desolation of Smog and Smog himself, that's a great character. My number 2 villain.
I'm gonna take a little bit of a sidebar here, but I think it's evident. It's the reason why those movies were not successful. It was an obvious cash grab. Jackson wanted 2 movies. They forced him to make 3. He didn't have the passion he did for the original trilogy. And the original trilogy they didn't use CGI. They used practical effects. It made it real. And like the orcs were absolutely terrifying. Like the Uruk-hai that kills Boromir. I remember as a kid, I was like, that's fucking terrifying. Like when he grabs Aragorn's sword, when he has one arm and like draws him in, doesn't even care, he's like slicing his hands, like this thing's freaking terrifying. And then the orcs here, like it's obvious CGI. It's done hastily, whatever. It's done very like poorly, very quickly, just to pump these movies out. It wasn't good, and the first one, Unexpected Journey, Dad fell asleep. Why? It starts off like the Fellowship.
They're
It doesn't
drinking
set-
the
it doesn't-
entire time.
It doesn't set the tone like the
Yeah.
Fellowship did. It doesn't set that first tone. It doesn't have like that right hook that gets you. It doesn't matter if there's all this exposition stuff, then that lame ass song. Like
Yeah,
it's
that
like
was heavily criticized. I'm thinking
yeah,
about it.
it's like it doesn't have this. You immediately feel like this feels different. It doesn't have the same, which sucked because the trailers for that actually I felt a lot more of like that Middle Earth energy than I do for Rings of Power. Last trailer with that song, I'm freaking nervous. But that's a
If
whole
they
other-
made The Hobbit, like if Jackson made The Hobbit like a couple years after Return of the King, I think it
Oh.
would have been a better movie.
They would have gave him the bank. They're
Like give
hey,
him
take your
05,
time,
start The
just do
Hobbit
it.
immediately. Just I think
Exactly.
it works better. They're not getting caught up in the superhero realm
Probably needed
in
a
this
rest.
like age of CGI. Because you're right, that's what made the original Lord of the Rings so special. The commitment to make that movie so good, and the attention to detail, the costume design, Oscar worthy. And then we just moved to computers for the rest of the trilogy.
Not Oscar worthy, Oscar winning.
Yeah, nuts. All right. So that was me. So Mike, we're on to you and the third round.
Third round. I'm gonna go with a supporting character here. And I'm gonna go with actually one of my favorite characters in the entire trilogy, Theoden.
Okay.
I love this guy. This guy is like such a leader. Seeing him like Gandalf, like it also is like when you first see his powers coming back when he gets cast out. He casts out Saruman from being holding power over Theoden, and then he comes back to his people, and then he's able to, in a time of crisis, rally, and then all of a sudden get to Helm's Deep and then lead the charge. Also, some of the best lines in the trilogy, like, and so it begins, and then like, you want to talk about like, I still think Return of the King, it rivals D-Day in Saving Private Ryan for best battle scene.
Oh yeah.
We
have to talk about like
right.
what is the best battle scene in the history of Lord of the Rings. We have to get to that. That should be a
when
category.
When he leaves the bride for the Rohirrim, and like he's chanting like on this day, he's like rallying it up, and he's like screaming death, like he's like death, and they're all chanting death. Like it's like that Viking like berserker, like they know they're gonna die, but I'm gonna die gloriously. Like it's like, and then they freaking you get like amped up watching, like you're about to watch some shit, then fuck them up, and then they like they storm down the orcs. It's just like, and then I mean, just like that guy is so inspiring, and like he's actually also like he's kind of like what you would expect a regular person. Like he's not this huge hero. He's flawed. He was corrupted, and then his kingdom suffered, and now they're in crisis, and he has to find a solution. It's kind of, and then he's realizing the whole fate of the world is at stake, and he has to help, and it's a losing battle, but he has to try. It's kind of like how you would expect people, everyday person, if they were thrust in that situation, how they would have to, handle it.
Yeah, and like the death scene, like right before the charge, when he's riding past all the people on the front line, and he's clicking all the spears. That's like chills. Like when I was rewatching it, like chills.
Oh,
That
so that was directly Tolkien took that from history, from Alechna Pride, Polish Pride, the winged hussars, when they fought the Turks and forced the Turks out of Europe, when they were overtaken in Vienna. They had the Polish winged hussars, which was like the most fearsome cavalry. They dominated for like 1,000 years in Middle Age warfare. They were at the top of a hill, and they came down like that upon the Turks and then sliced them up.
When they ride through in Two Towers?
Yeah.
Oh,
so it was kind of like that. It's like the fate of the world's at stake, and then they come in and save the day.
Electric.
Like,
yeah. But I also will say, yes, good leader, but I will push back a little bit. We'll push back. And when they're it starts with the H, when they're in the mountains, and he's kind of like being a pessimist, and Aragorn's like, "We're not done."
He needs Aragorn.
Aragorn has to rally the troops.
Yeah,
he's inspired.
What men can do against such hate.
And then Return of the King, when the horse is on him and his daughter's like over him, he goes, like when my time is done, he goes, "It wasn't me that and she's like, "You're a good man," and he goes, "Aragorn's the one that like rallied the troops." He's like confessing. So like, yes, good leader, but also give props to your earlier pick in Aragorn.
Yeah, no, but I think that's what's great. Is like he's pessimistic when he's realizing like they might lose at Helm's Deep and like the world's end. It's just like it's how an average person would react. Like
He's like pragmatic. Like he's pragmatic compared to like an
Yeah,
optimistic Aragorn, you know, just like
Yeah.
Aragorn refuses to lose at all costs, you know?
yeah,
Michael Jordan.
And I do want to say, I think it shows how much a king matters, right, to these different kingdoms when he goes from like under the control of Saruman, and then there's new life breathed into him, and therefore there's new life breathed into him. There's new life breathed into his kingdom. You know, it just seems like once he like gains this, like the movie gains momentum when he becomes a force. You know, it just
Starts
feels like
chugging
okay.
along.
Exactly. It just he literally breathed new life. He gets to breathe, and then also like the movie is just like, okay, let's go. We got a shot against these guys. You know, it almost has like a 300 vibe. Also, like when we're going, like we're talking about fight at Helm's Deep, end of Two Towers. He is instrumental part of that, and it was his idea to ride out, right? Wasn't that him, or was that Aragorn?
That was Aragorn in Helm's
Aragorn.
Deep.
Ah,
He's like
okay.
he goes, what can men do against such hate? And he's like, ride out and meet them.
I
That's
gotta
what
say,
Aragorn says to him.
supporting character is a tough category right now.
I
It
know.
is a tough
There's
category.
a lot of good supporting characters.
I'm not looking forward to drafting it, to be honest. I'm afraid I'm gonna have to go. I mean, I think I got a criticism I'll have to talk about later, but yeah, keep going.
Glad I grabbed Beard from you guys.
Yeah, we were really clamoring for that one. Michael, Big Mike, you're on to the next pick, I believe, right? Start of the fourth
Yeah.
round.
Yep. So I'm gonna go villain, and I'm gonna go with Saruman.
Good.
Again, I really like Christopher Lee in here. Performance of the ages. Christopher Lee was actually he was probably the biggest Tolkien nerd on the entire set. Rest in peace.
He was alive when the books were written, bro.
he read the books every single year. He reread the entire trilogy because he was such a fan.
Wow.
And
How do you have time to do these movies?
And he actually auditioned for Gandalf. And I actually could see him as Gandalf. And he lost to McKellen, and Jackson thought you would be perfect as Saruman. And like he owned it. The evil, like he's like, it's such like the I think we were talking about Sauron. Like there really isn't Sauron in this movie. It's just the eye is really the villain here. He is like
Fellowship, but yeah.
He really is like the human form of evil in this movie. Like it's just incredible, like how he was able to, just become like this villain, and it's like crazy how it begins because like you think he's this good guy in the Fellowship. Gandalf comes to him for help, and then it's like, actually, this dude's already turned.
He starts beating the crap out of Gandalf.
And he's like the head wizard.
He's the most powerful wizard.
Yeah.
And so it gives you like the hopelessness of the situation where like the guy that's the most powerful wizard in the world is like, we can't win this. We should join forces with him. And you're like, oh shit.
Pragmatic, you know? But I'm also thinking during that scene where they're going one-on-one, it's one of the best parts of the Fellowship of the Ring.
Amazing battle.
What is so good about it is that there's blood. Like they are actually getting hurt. It's not a superhero movie where they're just taking hits and then like there's a sonic boom when they get hit and they pop back up. They are getting bodied in that scene. Ian McKellen is getting hit in the deck. Let the bodies hit the floor.
You see how much more powerful Saruman is over Gandalf. Like he really is like leagues better. And then he starts spinning him around and then he drops.
That's also what's so good. Like you're not all powerful if you're just a wizard. That doesn't mean you're gonna win.
There's levels to this shit.
I couldn't help but laugh watching that scene this time around.
Really?
I could. It was just so funny watching like when they're on the roof and Saruman pushes Gandalf to the edge. He's just holding on by his feet, and I kept thinking like, all right, well, this is like what Star Wars would be if there was no lightsabers. Like it would just be using the Force, and I would be thinking like every time I watch Star Wars, like original trilogy, I'm just thinking, like, I want them to use more Force. We talked about it in the Obi-Wan recaps, Obi-Wan Kenobi series recaps, how we loved how they used the Force in that, and how we always wanted to see more Force. This is like, if this was Star Wars, too much Force. But no, this is good. Wizards battling it out. I do like it. But yes, I have to say it. I couldn't help but laugh watching it this time around in Fellowship.
I also wanted to add, you brought up Star Wars. Like, after watching this, it almost seemed like a no-brainer that he could play a Sith Lord, meaning Christopher Lee.
Right.
It was just like,
Yeah.
this guy's Count
Perfect.
Dooku. You know, it's just like he has the energy. He gives out that energy of a Sith Lord. It was too obvious to do so afterwards. I don't think he was in Phantom Menace, though, right?
I don't think so. But
His character was, I was sorry, like the Count Dooku
Presence.
was, but not him.
Oh, got it.
Yep.
Well, Christopher Lee is also, he was just perfectly, it's his voice. He's known as a villain. Like, he was Count Dracula in the
Okay.
60s. Yeah. Like, what? What'd you say?
Like he's always a villain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he has that. He's big. He's intimidating. He has the voice. It's just like.
And it's the casting of this movie, of this trilogy. It's crazy how on point it is. And when you look at Gandalf, it seems so obvious. Ian McKellen, Christopher Lee is the villain. It's like they're almost like natural foils of one another. It seems so perfect.
I can only think of one better, and it involves Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart. Like,
we need a little more height. We gotta put them in stilts.
They just match like each other,
and
like
hair.
Just like it's such a great.
Let's see it with some locks, with some Ricky. I said get us some stilts, and Ricky says and hair.
No, I'm just saying, like, that's the only time like I can see like such a good juxtaposition of like villain and hero, and there's the chemistry between the two. Like the betrayal in Gandalf's eyes when Saruman says like, I'm already, like, I've chosen my side.
Like, he's like, dude, stop trying to convince me. It's done.
Don't look at this ball, buddy.
And
I've been looking at that 10 times
like,
a day.
Yeah, and then like just like
don't look at that, dude. I own this ball.
The coldness in his voice when he's like telling like the Uruk-hai when he first went, do you know how the orcs were first forged? It's just like, this dude is like so evil.
We needed like a scene with Christopher Lee reacting to the ball the way like Pippin did when he like grabs it, it's like shaking everywhere. We need a Christopher Lee like origin story there. All right, middle of the fourth round, it's on to me. I'm missing a Hobbit and then supporting character. I'm going to take care of the easy one first. I think it's Hobbit. I got a question before I make this pick. I feel like I can't just pick one of these guys. I got to take both, and it's Merry and Pippin. I don't think you could just take one.
I agree. Inseparable. Except they were separated, but inseparable.
I don't.
Return of the King, they're separated.
I will say I do like one over the other, but I feel like you have to pick them together.
They're just so synonymous.
I agree with that.
I want Merry and Pippin over Frodo. I don't want Frodo on my board. I feel like if I got Frodo on my board, I think
did Rick pick
Bilbo.
If we don't pick him for the Fellowship, like I don't know if that hurts our credibility a little bit.
I think it helps it, to be honest. I think he is so unlikable. I don't want Frodo on my board.
He did a good job in the movies, but like in the books, he's a much more likable character.
If you said I had to take one of
No, take Merry and Pippin. I just think it's kind of funny. It kind of could be subjective too. Like all of us were kind of like, Frodo.
the easy comic relief in this movie.
Oh yeah.
It's fascinating that they get separated from the squad, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Into Two Towers, because like already you have Frodo and Sam on their own. Like, can you have another pair of hobbits like on their own and actually survive without the Fellowship? And I love the connection they make with Treebeard and the squad. I love that. Comic relief was on point. They do kind of screw everything up in Fellowship, but they're so likable. Like, even if they screw something up, it's like they honestly cost Gandalf his life, kind of. like Gandalf the Grey was kind of like Merry and Pippin's fault. More specifically, Merry like screws up.
Mary's the screw up. He touches the Palantir. He touches the skull down.
Everything he touches goes bad, but he is such a moment of redemption, and they each have beautiful moments to their stories.
Oh yeah.
And I'm trying to think. Wait, who's stuck with Alwyn? It was
Pippin.
Pippin. Like that whole like sequence where he wants to be a warrior. I think he has a nice subplot, nice mini arc to his story as well.
Mary.
Wait, Mary is the one who goes with Alwyn, right?
Yes.
No,
In Return of the King.
Pippin's
Mary's
with Gandalf.
Pippin's with Gandalf.
Return of the King.
Yes,
at
right.
Gondor.
You're right.
Yes,
Yeah,
and he's the one
Pippin's-
talking about the quote you said
I
earlier.
always switch them. It is so
Yeah.
easy to switch them because that's another reason why they get drafted together. But they're the ones, and like they're like the joyful moments, them drinking and dancing and singing. It just puts a smile to your face whenever you see them. I enjoy watching the scenes that they're in. I actually like watching them, like kind of separately, more so at times than watching Sam, Frodo, and Gollum. I said it.
Pippin,
I really do.
Pippin's song too. That was Billy Boyd. Like he
Beautiful.
actually wrote and sang that song. Yeah, when the soldiers they go to their death. Like it's like it's
Sing
like
me a
so
song.
impactful. Like
I'm not gonna lie, on that scene, I was near the end of my marathon. Quick couple
You
15-second fast forwards.
Really?
You know it.
I like to me,
Yeah.
it's so
After
good.
10 seconds,
Like,
I was like,
that's a moment where they're giving him a shine, like almost like a tribute to like a 3-movie run, right? As a supporting
Yeah.
character, not getting the love of like an Aragorn or a Gandalf or a Frodo or a Sam. Give him that solo moment.
That
Yeah.
was one take.
No.
That was the first take. I just found that out yesterday.
Okay.
Jackson, he came up to Jackson. He's like, I wrote this song. He's like, let's film it. And so he filmed it in one take, and then obviously they re-recorded for sound. But the footage is one take. The very
right.
first one. Yeah.
So Mary and Pippin, I don't think we have to say much more, to be honest. We kind of know what they're all about. We're on to the finale of the 4th round. Ricky Flicks, you're up. You need a fellowship member and a movie.
yeah, and I'm gonna save the fellowship because Big Mike doesn't have a movie, so I'll just do a separate round for that, so they're not in the same round. So I'll pick that now. And this might be a hot take, but I'm picking the Two Towers.
Oh
That's
my
fine.
God.
I was gonna pick that.
What? I don't. Okay. Go. Make your case.
I love it. I think that, again, after Fellowship, it's setting up for the quest. You see the quest. You get introduced to Gollum officially. There's a hint, like a shadow of him in Fellowship, officially introduced. You get Isengard fully in here. Helm's Deep battle. Again, I think Minas Tirith is better, but Helm's Deep in here. I think, again, more introductions to other characters. I think Fellowship was introductions to settings, and yes, to characters, but to the major characters going into Return of the King. You see it here, right? Sauron. Saruman.
Saruman.
Oh, that was
Thank
good
you.
impersonation.
Yeah, that was pretty good. I think fully in force here. I'm a Two Towers guy. I think Return of the King, similar to what your comments earlier, what I said about Dune. I think Return of the King, that's like the perfect wrap up, but it does lag a bit. They have just an extra battle there at the end just to get Frodo across that last hour. Again, like it's like, all right, we already finished this epic battle. We're gonna have another one that feels like just like saving some or just putting in extra time. And Frodo and Sam at full annoyance in this movie. I'm going Two Towers.
What would you say then? Hot take, or actually not hot take, but debate. What's better, Battle of Helm's Deep or Battle of the Pelennor Fields? That's
Helm's Deep.
Helm's
Minas
Deep,
Tirith.
bro. I think Helm's
Helm's
Deep is the
Deep.
best battle in the history of Lord of the Rings.
Really?
I think it's better than Battle of Middle Earth, bro. Get
Minas
those dead
Tirith?
people out of here. I don't need those dead people.
That's
It doesn't
another thing
look.
about Return of the King. That's another thing. I didn't like the ending to that battle with just.
I don't like the
people
dead people fighting. I don't dig that at all. I think the underdog mentality of the Battle of Helm's Deep, the 300 vibe, right? The ride out, right, with Theoden and Aragorn. I think the humor with you got Legolas and Gimli going like counting together 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3.
Play as
And
well
you
as
got
Return of
like
the King. I agree.
you got Gimli next to Aragorn, the comic relief, where he's like, "Toss me." He goes like, "What? Toss me.
Good.
Just don't tell the elf." And then he does it, and then he's just like slaying. You are like at a sporting event cheering him on. Gandalf riding down with Éomer. Shout out Carl Urban, right? Shout out the boys. Riding down.
Very close supporting character for me. Very close.
Oh, it's still in play, Mike. It's
I
very
know.
much in play right now.
Well, I didn't pick him, but
no.
he's such a badass.
I'm leaning. I'm heavily leaning towards him due to like his appearance in that Battle of Helm's Deep. And the trees coming in, the return, right, of the twins, Merry and Pippin, Treebeard, Ricky just drafted him. I literally think that's a better fight. Although Battle of Middle Earth gets a lot of credit because it wraps up Return of the King. It has like a lot of heart into it, but I just don't dig the dead people. I don't even think it looks good on screen.
The dead people, I completely agree with. Completely. And then the mercenaries, I don't understand. Like, come on. Like, why are we doing this, mercenaries? You're on the wrong side here. But yeah, no, I think going back to the Two Towers here, again, I just personally, that's my favorite out of all of them. And I think what makes this, I think with trilogies, a big problem that you see in trilogies is either, yes, like Godfather, the third one's just so far late and the third one just suffers. But a lot of times it's the sequel that needs to live up to the original. Yes, Dark Knight, you're thinking of that, I know. But this one, like, I just think Two Towers just took it up levels where Fellowship felt more grounded in those settings that you talked about. This one's like, this is a spectacle. This is the Lord of the Rings. This is what we're talking about here. This is the epic trilogy that we want you to remember by. And the Two Towers for me is that.
This is where I think you actually sacrifice some of the storytelling for the action sequences that Mike was talking about before. The story gets a little crazy when they get separated, right?
Yeah.
The screen time's getting divvied up. It's not as easy to follow along. Fellowship is so much tighter than the Two Towers. I think as a movie itself, Fellowship's better. But you're looking for the moments, Two Towers has it. I love the battle sequence at the end. And we don't have Gandalf for the first half of Two Towers, So it's like I love Gandalf, and Ricky Flex. You obviously love Gandalf as well. He comes back strong as hell, like as Gandalf the White, and it makes like the presence like it's an amazing point of the movie. But that's kind of why I would go Fellowship, Return of the King, and then Two Towers.
There's also the fact, like to Ricky's point. I mean,
they're all amazing.
It shows like the spectacle, but it also shows like it does a fantastic job of world building. It shows the scope of Middle Earth. That's actually when the mercenaries are first introduced, because they expand on it more in the Two Towers in the movies than they did in Return of the King.
The book.
But like in the books, there are men from the south and the east, and they are on Sauron's side, and then they're being introduced, and they're like showing like, hey, not everybody, it's not just because you're of the race of men that you're gonna be on the side for good. Like there are people that are they're willing to side with the bad because they will benefit, and it just shows like that evil theme. But then also just it goes to a different kingdom. Like it shows the difference between Gondor and the difference between Rohan, and then like because Gondor, if you watch the extended edition, it shows a lot more scenes. It shows Boromir actually leading the troops before his death, before he went off to join the Fellowship. But then it introduces like Faramir, Boromir's brother, and like how they are in their own way trying to combat this evil that they know is present. It's kind of it just does a great job of like what Ricky was saying, building on the Fellowship, but then getting you ready for it's setting the stage for how epic the Return of the King is going to be.
Ricky Flicks has talked about this multiple times in the podcast. It does what a sequel is supposed to do: expand the scope of the universe. That's exactly what it does, right? And it takes you different parts that you are going to be exploring throughout this movie into Return of the King. Great. They're all so amazing. They're all on par with each other. But yeah, there's three and there's three of us. It's like a perfect thing to draft in a category. All right. With that being said, Ricky Flicks, you're kicking off the fifth round, and you need a Fellowship member. This arguably is the decision of the draft. Like in terms of like my anticipation, who are you going to pick, one or the other? It's tough. I want to know who you're thinking.
So this is a tough one. And I think I'm debating between two, but I think you all know who I'm going to pick. Big Mike goes against what you would probably pick, but I'm going Legolas.
No, I knew it.
The name itself, the name, the style, bow,
the cachet.
Orlando Bloom in his prime. Two Towers just talked about it. Battle of Helm's Deep. Little Tony Hawk down the staircase. Bow and arrow. Psh, psh, psh. And then Return of the King with the elephant goes down the snout after taking out everyone in the elephant and the elephant itself, and then sliding down the snout and the close up on that, just the style there. And he's so good. You know what? Let's bring him back for The Hobbit. Well, specifically Desolation of Smaug. So Legolas, I picked him over Gimli. Yeah, I'm going to say it because no one else is going to pick because he's the other member of the Fellowship. I love Gimli. And I just don't think – I think he's funny, right? Kind of the comedic atmosphere or comedic relief there, comic relief there. And he's great. But I just think I chose style. I chose style over power. That's what I did. That's my final pick.
Mike, what do you think? Legolas over Gimli. You agree?
That's a tough one. I mean, like,
so tough.
Yeah, Legolas though. I mean, just to support Ricky's opinion first. I mean, like, such a great character. Really, again, he goes through an arc. Like, he's young and like very arrogant, like clearly very arrogant. He thinks he's better because he's an elf. He thinks he's superior. He thinks, these men, these dwarves, they're all stupid. They're all irrational. Like, why are we even involving ourselves with them? We're elves. We're above them. And then you go to see him, like, to the end with it's kind of meme now. This line's so classic. But he goes like, I never thought I'd die side by side with an elf. How about with a friend? Side by side friend. Like, it's just like, you see, like, he became much more, even though he's an elf, much more human, much more personal, and like it formed like this strong bond with Aragorn and Gimli and even Frodo and all these other characters. Yeah, and so that growth is really amazing to watch, and especially because he's like, yeah, he's probably the oldest, just because elves are old, but mentally he's definitely the youngest, and like only one that could be, I guess, considered younger is Frodo, but like he's really very young and eager to like become this legend, because his dad's a king. It's his own. This is how he cements his legacy. So
I thought about drafting Thurndil for supporting characters. I did. Lee Pace.
That's a good one.
I think graphic-wise, you made the right decision. Legolas looks better on a graphic, but I think personally, I would have took Gimli all day. And it's not just because he's a short king. I think, first of all, he's better. The guy who played him is a better actor.
Oh, for sure.
Like I think
Orlando
Bloom low-key sucks. Like in this
movie. John Rhys Davies played Treebeard.
I don't think, like, after watching this, I'm like, Legolas is cool looking. He's a good looking dude, but he is the weak link of the cast, in my opinion. He doesn't get many extended lines. He doesn't have the long soliloquies of an Aragorn, of a Gandalf. He doesn't have like the comedic timing of a Gimli, but he looks sweet when he rides down the stairs. And when he is shooting the arrow at a quick pace, like, cool character, acting wise, I thought he was like bottom of the totem pole. What do you guys think about that? Am I right or wrong?
I think with Gimli, you see, like, in the Fellowship in the Mines of Moria, when they go and he realizes everyone's dead. Baldwin's dead. Sad to see, because after you watch the Hobbit movies, you're like, oh, that's fate. But like, it's true. But like, Gimli is like, you see the sorrow. Like, we don't really get a moment like that with Legolas. No, you don't get like a moment of pure anguish. And like, I mean, part of it is because an elf, they're not as emotional as dwarves and men, but it's still like he doesn't have like that range that Gimli does. Like, when Gimli, like, you see like elation, you see joy, you see fear, and then you see
non-emotional. Like, he's so one note, like, pretty much the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's just kind of what the character is. Like, at least writing. I agree. Was it because of Orlando Bloom? I don't think so. I think, even though I don't think he's a very good actor, I just, no offense, but I just think that's the character. He's there to be cool and for the style points, and that's what I'm drafting. Like, I'm drafting for the style points. He's what you think of. You think like, who's like the coolest character in Lord of the Rings? You're thinking Legolas. And again, like, he's not my favorite. I think, like, I'm just saying, like, to the cool nature style points, I'm picking Legolas. And again, on the graphic, it looks good, but I think that my board here, after you pick Gandalf, I wrote down my final 4 picks. Like, I knew, like, oh, I get these 4 picks. I just knew I would get them because I knew like Fellowship, my top 2 in the Fellowship were gone. Hobbit was gone, and I already picked a villain. So it's like, all right, well, no one's probably going to pick Treebeard. No one's going to pick Bilbo. No one's going to pick Two Towers since you already picked Fellowship. And Big Mike, you alluded to Return of the King. I thought you would honestly pick that. So I was like, oh, all right, well, I know the rest of my draft already.
I was very close to picking Bilbo over Sam.
Wow.
I really do like Bilbo. I think he's a great character. And
Yeah.
as I've gotten older, I really think he's just a fantastic character. Great story arc. Then
Even if
actually rides off into the sunset. Like
even
Right.
if there was never books written, it was just Lord of the Rings. They introduced Bilbo, like you knew, like this guy's been through something. This guy has gone through with the ring and like the way he approaches it and his confidence around the Shire and how he's like such a legend. It was so inevitable that he deserved like his own movie, his own trilogy, because like he obviously went through some crap, you know. All right, we're on to me. I need a supporting character, and I think I'm about to do something. People were critical of Lord of the Rings because of its focus on men rather than women. Okay. I think I have to take a female character here for the sake of diversity. And we are 21st century men on this podcast. It's all about picking the right woman here. There are 3 that I'm looking at. Eowyn, incredible arc, right? Actually, not really an incredible arc. I think doesn't get a lot of screen time in Return of the King. You got Arwen, Liv Tyler, smoking hot. You know, she looks incredible. I can't, after proclaiming myself a 21st century feminist, I cannot draft her after saying that. But she is on fire in this movie. I think I have to go with Cate Blanchett as Galadriel.
That was my number 2 supporting character.
She has so much mystique around her. She's so powerful. She's the female Gandalf here. She is like almost Scarlet Witch with her ability to get into people's minds, right? Make them reflect on their past. And like, I love how they do those allusions to her. Arwen does the same thing, Elvish and everything. How she can just maintain a presence without even being in that situation. I think in the Two Towers, right? Was it Two Towers? No. Was it Fellowship? Fellowship, when they first meet her, I thought that was such an incredible moment.
Yeah,
and also, like, she tests herself with the ring, similar to Gandalf. She is kind of like the counterpart, the female Gandalf here, in my opinion.
she's actually more powerful.
I agree.
She just recuses herself from the Battle of Middle Earth because, like, she's an elf. She's like, this is not my battle. This is not my place. But I actually think she's more powerful than Gandalf.
You see that power in Hobbit trilogy. She versus Sauron.
She is so regal, and I think once again, casting on point, like Cate Blanchett. I don't even know how big of a name she was at this point. Yeah. Honestly, like I don't know many Cate Blanchett movies from the 90s. Name me one.
I'm thinking of 22 Jump Street. I thought the budget was Cate Blanchett.
Like Cate Blanchett, sometimes I confuse with like Gwyneth. Sometimes. Carte blanche. So I think sometimes like I confuse Cate Blanchett with like Gwyneth Paltrow, who's like a little less regal, obviously, and like Cate
better
Blanchett,
actress by far.
Like can't play. She has
way
like
actress.
prestige. Like she is like
amazing actress.
Cate Blanchett, and I feel like this catapulted her, right? I can't name a Cate Blanchett movie from the 90s.
Down to Mr. Ripley.
Bandits.
Oh wait, that's 2001.
Mr. Ripley's a huge one.
No, she was in. Yeah, no, she was in Bandits. That's like 03.
She was in a lot of TV series in the mid 90s.
But this one, it's just like people are like, "Oh my god!" Like the presence on screen here, very limited screen time, but she absolutely steals the show when she's there. She is glowing, literally.
And I think she was the woman in Eyes Wide Shut where drags Tom Cruise out and says like, "You shouldn't be here." I think she's also that woman.
99.
She's in the. I know she's too old for Leo, but she was in The Aviator.
04, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but she was also in Elizabeth, where she plays Queen Elizabeth I.
Oh, okay.
Badass historical figure. Queen Elizabeth is like freaking like probably one of the best leaders in English history.
Prove the haters
Yeah.
wrong, brought him back
Yeah.
to glory, 100%.
And that was in
I-
'98, so that's right before the Lord, like right before she was. That actually might be why she was cast. Like that's right before.
Regal.
Right before they went
That's
to New
common
Zealand.
adjective.
Yeah.
But I'll just add this, since this was my second supporting character, like after Treebeard. I think good narration, right? She starts off Fellowship with her narration.
Oh, amazing. Talk about Christopher Lee, like
Beautiful voice.
Pure darkness, pure light. Like that voice is just like
Yeah, very good narration. We mentioned the powerfulness of her character. I'm also interested in her in Rings of Power. Not Kate Blanchett, but this character.
She's old as hell.
She's gonna be a young, like
big boots to fill there.
Yeah, it's. I'm very interested in Galadriel or whatever in this on Friday when this series comes out. And then finally, Big Mike, this is more of a question to you. Is it true that this wasn't in the books, or was this in the books? Was she her character?
Galadriel?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
So she is not. So The Hobbit took significant artistic license and liberties compared to Lord of the Rings. She's a big factor in Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion. I can never say this damn word. The Silmarillion. It's the book that they're basing off of.
Yep, I know
It's
what
all
you're
the
saying.
other stories in Middle Earth.
Begins with a C, right?
Amazon, Rings of
Silmarillion?
Pyrrhus. Yeah, it's very hard to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah,
I already
yeah.
kind of have like a slur.
We don't worry
so
too much about vocabulary on this podcast. For grammar.
true.
the Sil, but Simril.
That is
but
until you
anyways,
joined it, Michael.
He's not she's not in The Hobbit at all.
Okay.
And
Got
like
it.
and that's also a
Saruman
carryover. You need
or
some presence.
Elrond.
You know?
None of those people are in The Hobbit at all.
Interesting, because like age-wise, it matches up like they should be.
Yeah, well, Tolkien didn't. Well, you gotta remember, the Fellowship came out in 1956, and The Hobbit came out in 1938. So like, Tolkien hadn't even like those characters weren't even in his head yet.
Gotcha. Oh, interesting. All right, so we are on to the final pick here, Mike. I assume you're going to go
Mr. Irrelevant here.
Battle of the Five Armies as the last pick for your movie category.
Unexpected
I was
Journey.
very close actually to the 1970s anime.
Oh yeah, really put a spin on it.
Those actually aren't that bad, but I am gonna obviously go with Return of the King.
Return of the King is Mr. Irrelevant of this draft. That is nuts.
Yeah.
And Frodo goes undrafted.
I think it's just.
What are we doing?
Yeah, I think Return of the King is just like, I mean, it's not the one I always go back to, and this is actually, it's a personal thing. I never like watching the last movie of a series or a trilogy. Like I never watch Endgame. I don't like seeing characters I love like it's over, like the story's over. I hate it. And then like seeing like Frodo part from his friend Sam after everything they've been through. It's really actually very emotional, very tough to watch, but it also speaks to like what a journey this movie has been. And I think Return of the King, honestly, it has a strong case for the best movie ever made. Strong case. Wow. And if you've ever already tied for most Oscars, I think it is the best movie ever made in terms of cinematic masterpiece. The CGI still holds up 20 years later. And the fact that they also use practical effects and just like the culmination of this story. But then there's also mini arcs in the movie itself. Like it feels like it could be a trilogy in itself. This movie's so damn long, especially if you watch the extended edition. But like you're on the edge of your seat for all of it.
Like theatrical, scene, 3 hours, 20 minutes.
And that's the theatrical. Like the extended has so much more stuff in it. It has what might be the best battle scene ever. Like, and it's mythical. I mean, the dialogue is fantastic. The stakes are high. It's just such an amazing movie. And so, yeah, it's no surprise I'm going. I mean, Fellowship and Two Towers are taken. So, but yeah.
Interesting. So would you go would you go Return of the King, Fellowship, and then Two Towers, or would you go Return of the King, Two Towers, Fellowship?
So in terms of my favorites, like personally speaking, I would go Two Towers, Return of the King, Fellowship. In terms of best movies, like as a movie, what's the best? I would go Return of the King, Fellowship, Two Towers.
Sounds about right. I think I'm going to go through, right? So that's Mr. Irrelevant's last pick of the draft. I'm going to run through the draft board. I think we only really have to go through supporting characters. Any honorable mentions? Let me just go through right now. So we'll go through Ricky Flix's draft first. Fellowship member, he has Legolas. Villain, he has Gollum. Movie, he has the Two Towers. Hobbit, he's got Bilbo Baggins. And then finally, supporting character, he has Treebeard. Dr. O has Gandalf. I love the Treebeard pick. Like, I do like that pick. Dr. O has Gandalf as a Fellowship member. His villain is Smaug.
Can I just interject? That Treebeard pick is a Jake DeBrusque pick in 2015. That's a reach. It was just like, holy crap. And it ended up like Jake DeBrusque turned out to be a decent play. But like, holy shit, Rick. I was not expecting you to
like you picked Treebeard. I think that was literally like a top 5 pick in the draft, right? Or top 6, I should say. You're like, I'm gonna go back to back number 6. I'm going Treebeard, and that's before we pick like Gandalf.
Return of the
King. We have Treebeard. We don't have Frodo. No Frodo, no Gimli, but we got Treebeard.
It was just crazy. The guys came after him. It's
no
like,
Sauron,
really?
No Frodo.
That's the guy like you're taking a flyer on for sure. All right.
His ceiling's really high.
Dr. O has Smaug as the villain. Movie, he has Fellowship of the Ring, Hobbit, Merry and Pippin, and then finally supporting character Galadriel, whatever. Big Mike has Aragorn as a Fellowship member, Saruman as his villain, Return of the King as his movie, Samwise Gamgee as his Hobbit, and Theoden as his supporting character. I got Mike in this one. I got Mike with the combination of Sam, Return of the King, and Aragorn, impossible to overcome.
I agree.
I really wanted to pick Arwen or Eowyn, especially Arwen because I picked Aragorn.
Supporting character is such an irrelevant category here.
It's a tough one because there's so many characters to pick from.
Yeah.
Oh, also honorable mention by far, Boromir. That was tough.
I wanted to take him as a supporting character. I was like, I can't believe I forgot.
That's the one I would have allowed out of the Fellowship. To be
Damn it! I literally
Ricky. I was gonna say
I crossed him out. Like I'm not allowed to pick him.
For supporting characters, I said 3: Merry and Pippin and Boromir. I would have counted them as supporting.
Okay, I think
that would have made me contest with you for the draft. I think if I got Boromir.
He's in one movie and a few scenes, but he has such an impactful presence in that time on screen.
One does not simply ignore Boromir as a supporting character.
He's a great Sean Bean.
You are my captain. You are my king. You know what I mean?
I personally, by the way, I wouldn't have if you guys took him supporting character, that's a veto. By the way, he's in the Fellowship. It's a veto.
I think he's a little bit different because he's not in all 3 movies.
Like Merry and Pippin's different because they're hobbits. Like they have to be drafted in hobbits. They're not supporting character. They're all in the Fellowship.
I literally said he would be the only member of the Fellowship that I would allow in the supporting character, and because he's only in one movie.
Yeah.
But the Fellowship of the Ring is the movie he's in.
I know. So that's why I was like, let's just keep it simple. You can't pick him.
I literally crossed it off. But like Boromir, I don't think his death it doesn't, I guess, how do I describe it? It doesn't it doesn't pay back for what he's done, in my opinion. It wasn't that rewarding, to see him go through that death at the end. It was just he didn't really sacrifice anything. Like when you look back at it, he didn't really do anything. Merry and Pippin still get taken, right?
Okay.
After
this is where I think it's important, and I think
the
movie could have learned from the books. So Boromir is supposed to be like this example of a man. In the book, he's enormous. He's much bigger than Aragorn. He's a warrior. He's a leader. He's going to be his father is the steward of Gondor. He's going to be the steward of Gondor, aka king. He's going to lead them. This is the guy that should take the ring and lead the Fellowship. No, this dude is corrupted by the ring. He is not a leader, and it isn't until he learns from his mistake that he is not this perfect leader like most books would have him be. He is a fallible man, and Aragorn actually is that leader, is able to resist temptation, and then he ultimately pays for it with his life, but he makes the right choice trying to save Merry and Pippin. And in the last moments of his life, he's worried about, they took the halflings. He's like trying to tell Aragorn like what happened to them. Like, are they
That was-
safe?
That was
Right.
another thing, like on this rewatch, like even that, and then in the Two Towers when Gimli, Legolas, and Aragorn are like tracking the orcs and Merry and Pippin. It's like they care so much about these hobbits, and they've known them for 5 minutes. They barely
Like they
have met
owe
them.
something to them. Like
Exactly. Yeah, they care
brotherhood.
so much, and like they don't even have the ring, but they're like, we gotta go get them.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I also think like Boromir's death is huge because it's not the Game of Thrones trope where like, oh, anybody can die, but it shows like these guys, all of them do have the possibility like they might not all make it. Like,
Yeah.
'cause
Someone
this
had to
guy-
go, and it like I guess it was somewhat impactful. I just don't think it was as strong as like Peter Jackson made it out to be or wanted it to be, in my opinion. Just because of, like it wasn't as rewarding, they still get taken. If somehow he created some time and they get captured at the beginning of Two Towers, okay, maybe. But like directly after he dies, they take him. I was just like, God damn it, what he died for? What?
Drew the orcs away. Frodo got away.
Frodo got away, I guess, but Frodo was already running from Boromir because he was trying to steal the ring. You know, it's just like
could I say a supporting character I'm surprised no one took?
go ahead.
Elrond.
He was
I
on my
don't like
board.
him, bro. I don't
Really?
really like him
What?
that much. Not like I like Hugo Weaving, but like he's trying to disparage true love, bro.
Yeah, but then he ultimately like I think he's an important part of that like Arwen and Aragorn story.
Yeah, no, he is, and he's also very wise. He's got to have a presence in the Rings of Power, right?
Yeah, you know who's playing him?
No.
That guy.
And
Hugo
Ned
Weaving.
Stark, the guy that played Ned Stark. He looks nothing like
Yes.
Hugo Weaving, which I'm a little pissed.
Young
off.
Ned
The
Stark.
guy that played young Ned Stark.
No way.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
But
I'm excited to see
also,
him. I wish I saw just like more of him. Like I love seeing him in the beginning fighting for a second. Like I wish I got like.
well, you realize like this dude's a badass. Like,
Yeah, he is. I just don't like he seems to have beef with Aragorn and things like that, and like he just doesn't respect him. And I don't know. He's cool, and I like Hugo Weaving.
Yeah.
But I like Galadriel a lot more. It crossed
Oh, yeah.
my mind. I had him on my board, but not to be the next guy drafted.
I do like Arwen more than Elrond. I'm just surprised. He's a very popular character. So Arwen,
Arwen, I thought about drafting. I really did.
I feel like I should have. I just really like Theoden, but like Arwen is really like badass. Like she saves Frodo's life. Like that's her introduction. It's like
good.
she's a force to be reckoned with.
Oh,
Like,
that is a.
she's not just like a
scene.
damsel in distress.
I'm the faster
she
writer.
is powerful.
Capable.
Yeah.
100%. Maybe I should have gone there. I wanted to take a woman because, like, that is what Game of Thrones. I mean, it's not Game of Thrones. Excuse my bite my tongue there. Lord of the Rings. That is like what they're most heavily criticized for. Is that like the
However,
representation for female characters?
I get that, but there's also like Eowyn is a very like she like when she kills who
That felt shoehorned. I don't know.
I think she actually says that in the book. But like I am no man. But like Arwen's a very strong character. She actually tells her dad straight up, like, no, you're wrong. I choose immortal life. F yourself. Like, and then there's Galadriel, who's the most powerful being besides Sauron. But yeah, I do hear they get that a lot. But again, you gotta think, I know this is fancy, but it's supposed to take place in like the Middle Ages. Like, and that's how it was. Like, so but it's not, again, it's modern because it's like from the past 100 years, but it's not modern by 21st century standards.
True. Yeah. No, I understand what you're saying there. That's all I got. Any final comments before we wrap up this draft and we kind of preview Rings of Power? Go ahead, Ricky.
I will say, so like we mentioned a couple, like Legolas's dad, Thorndale, would have been a good supporting character for me. The White Orc as a villain, like in the Hobbit trilogy, the Nazgul.
I think it's Balrog or something.
Balrog.
Oh,
gotcha.
Not
Then a
Balrog.
Nazgul, specifically Angmar, I think would have been a good villain.
Which
Sauron,
king of
obviously.
Angmar?
Which I was gonna say the Witch King of Angmar.
Yeah.
Like, he was.
I thought that was probably the next guy if I couldn't get Smaug.
I was so
I would go
close to
hit.
picking him.
Like Gollum is arguably I wanted to take Gollum as supporting character potentially. I think that he would blow everyone out of the water in that regard. But you took him as villain, you know. So once you do that as villain, I'm like, oh, okay.
Did anyone? Oh, go ahead, Rick.
No, you ask. I have one more.
No, go ahead. You're probably gonna say it.
No, I would say like one character I really wanted to pick, just to show some appreciation for the Hobbit trilogy, but I ended up doing that anyways. But it didn't fit into any of these categories. Was Thorin Oakenshield?
Thorin.
He's a
Yeah,
hobbit. Oh, he's a dwarf.
he's a
Damn.
dwarf.
Yeah,
I would have
didn't
taken him
fit
for
any of the
Hobbit.
categories.
Mm.
Aimer, we talked about Carl
Oh,
Urban, just
yeah.
not enough screen time. I also like one of the low key best animals in like movies is Shadowfang.
Shadowfax.
Oh, did I get it wrong?
Shadowfax,
Shadowfax.
beautiful creature.
Yeah, just like
Yeah.
that moment
Majestic
in Two
beast.
Towers when they is it he or she?
I think it's a he.
He saves Aragorn, that beautiful moment, and takes the knee, and then she then rides all the way back right to Theoden. Incredible moment. I'm trying to think who else I had. I had Faramir.
I was gonna say that one.
Also has a good redemption arc, similar to
Yeah.
Boromir. It's almost too similar, to be honest. And now we already talked about Gimli. We talked about Elrond. Oh, was it Haldir? Haldir? The elf. He looks like Legolas.
Oh yeah, I always forget his name. I know you're talking
I wish
about.
he had
Yeah.
more screen time. He had potential.
Yeah, it's too bad he died. Like he was good.
Yeah. Battle Helm's
Yeah.
Deep. It'll get you.
Yeah, he's good for the short amount of time he was on screen though.
Okay. Perfect. All right. That's gonna do it for the draft. And Mike, will you be joining us for our Rings of Power recaps?
Sure.
Thank you. Very enthusiastic.
I'll be too excited.
Episode 1 debuting this Friday. We're gonna have a recap released for the weekend for you. And then guess what? House of the Dragon coming this Sunday. We'll have our reactions to episode 3 to House of the Dragon dropping Monday. This is the streaming wars, baby. This is something that we've been talking about, a rivalry that is about to begin. Rave reviews for early season House of the Dragon. Early reviews are in for Rings of Power. Also, people are even claiming it's better than House of the Dragon so far. Things are heating up right now. Make sure you're also tuning in to the feed wherever you're listening right now. Hit that follow button, rate 5 stars, leave a review. We'll share it on the next podcast. We're doing She-Hulk too. All right. Hopefully things start heating up. Maybe we get some Daredevil action. Who knows? More Emil Blonsky, hopefully, is Abomination. Maybe, hopefully, not very cringeworthy. We'll see what happens. They've been kind of getting wild on social media feeds as of late. Thank you again to Big Mike for joining us for this podcast. Right? Make sure you're also, if you're watching on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe. Right? Simple as that. For Dr. O and Ricky Flicks, until next time, we will smell ya.